Hey everyone, it's Howard Gearhauser alongside my dad, Dr. Richard Gearhauser. In today's video, we wanted to talk a little bit more about the coronavirus and what you can do in terms of playing your part within the community to prevent the spreading of it. Now, the coronavirus, a lot that's been talked about is the mortality rate and that being really high. And I know a big comparison is, well, what about the seasonal flu that kills way more people per year than the coronavirus, which is true for right now at least. But the big difference with the coronavirus is because it's reaching so many people at one time, the hospitals are getting overcrowded. So people who are more susceptible to this virus aren't getting the care they need in the ICU, for example. So they don't even have an opportunity to be saved. So that's kind of the issue here. And that's why you need to play your part. Even if you're healthy and the coronavirus isn't even something that you have or would be something that creates symptoms within you, if you spread it to everyone, there's going to be people who are sick and who are susceptible. And this can be problematic because they won't get the care they need. So I think that's an important distinction that needs to be made. It's not like the coronavirus necessarily is dropping people right in their tracks. It's the fact that they're not able to get the care they need. So we wanted to talk about this and how we can prevent this from going exponential. And rather, even if we all end up getting it, it'll be in a slower progression to where those who are really susceptible will have access to the care. So Dad, can you elaborate a little bit more on what's gone on in China and Italy and South Korea that's showing us what's possible in both sides if we don't really take this seriously versus if we do take it seriously, what's going on in terms of the mortality rate with the coronavirus?
Yes, well, in China, in Wuhan, basically they got, in the beginning, there were way more cases than they realized. And of course, this comes because, they don't have the testing available and they don't, test enough people. And then when they start testing more people, they realize there were way more cases than they expected. So it got out of hand very quickly. And what it took to control it was kind of a lockdown to where they restricted the movement of people. They closed businesses, and that was effective. So that was effective. But the death rate there was pretty high, 3-4%, which is way higher than the flu. With the flu, the death rate is generally about 0.5%. And so it was much, much higher. Now, if you take Italy, kind of the same thing happened, was they had a lot more of the virus in their communities than they realized. So they, didn't do anything drastic. They didn't do a lockdown or anything like that. And they have an explosion of cases. Now, when you have an explosion of cases like this, the hospital ICUs fill up. Now, what happens with this is respiratory failure, lungs stop working, and you go into the ICU when that happens, and you get intubated and put on a respirator, or you have the extracorporeal oxygenation. That's a special machine that can give you oxygen to bypass the lungs and can be life-saving when you get a serious case of this. So what happened in Italy was the hospitals got overrun. So basically, people couldn't be put in the ICU. There weren't any beds. So their death rate was much higher, like around 5%. And it's probably because of this. Now, again, I'm not saying these numbers are absolutely true. Everything is an estimate at this point, but looking at the numbers, those higher death rates seem to be a part of the healthcare system being overwhelmed. Now, if you take a look at South Korea, which did a much better job at responding, so they didn't get, when you get a huge spike, an exponential spike in cases, that's when you get the overwhelm of the hospitals. Too many people sick all at once, not enough beds in the ICU, not enough of these special machines to bypass the lungs. Those machines, there's only 250 of those machines in the entire country. So think how quickly those are going to get used up. So when you're in that exponential part of the curve where it's rising very quickly, if you act aggressively and you isolate cases so you don't just keep spreading it, like they did in South Korea, their death rate was less than 1%. It was 0.5%, which is the typical percent of the flu virus, which is much more acceptable. I mean, we accept that year after year after year, because that's the way it goes. 0.5% of people that get the flu die. Most of those have pre-existing conditions, but not always. Sometimes young, healthy people die. So there's all kinds of variables involved, more than we could ever figure out. But what can we do as an individual to flatten that curve out so that we don't get such a spike in the number of people all at once getting the disease? Draw it out over a longer duration, which means we keep our ICUs open. So if you get that serious case, the ICU has a bed, and then you're much more likely to survive because you get the oxygen either through a respirator or the extracorporeal machine, and you survive. So, worst, grandma or me, I'm considered an elder, high risk. I would like to live a few more years if possible. I would like for the ICU to be able to give me oxygen if I happen to have a bad case of it. So this is why this social distancing. So social distancing is, if you're a young teenager, you may say that, oh, no way am I gonna, not go to where the action is, where all the people are, to the concert, or, wherever it is. Think of it for your grandma's sake, or think of it, for other people in your community, the other people you love, or the people you hate, or whatever it is. You're doing this altruistically. You're doing it for others. You're flattening the curve. If you're not one of those that gets exposed, gets the virus, spreads it on because you're out doing your social interactions, and we don't have to do that forever. This social distancing is for a period of time till this blows over. It's going to blow over. It's blowing over in Wuhan. It took a lockdown to accomplish that, and it looks like in America we're beginning to follow suit, because that is effective. That inhibits the spread of the virus by locking people down, because you just lock one person down that would have gotten exposed and infected, and then they pass it on to 15 other people. You can see how that becomes exponential spread till everyone has it. And everyone, as Howard mentioned, might eventually be exposed to it, but if we do it on a much slower scale, and of course, there's the anticipation of maybe having a vaccine out there, or maybe developing antiviral treatments, doing some quick studies. There's a lot of antiviral treatments that are available. Nobody knows if any of them help. They've been used, and the studies are in progress of giving the antivirals and to see if they have an impact. At this point, no one has a clue if they help or not. And it could be that a novel antiviral is in the pipeline and would be fast-tracked. Obviously, governments, the CDC and the NIH are going to be willing to fast-track things like this that have such an impact on society and our economy.
Yeah, and to touch on the point that you mentioned earlier, it's like this is bigger than just any one individual. And this, I think, is an actual really important lesson that we're learning as not just a nation, but globally. We're learning this lesson of coming together for a bigger cause. There's actually some beauty to this. I know it can seem scary, and I know it can seem, like fear is really high, because it is. But I think we're going to learn a lot about how unified we can actually be, how much we can actually care and love one another through this process. And the social distancing, meaning, yeah, maybe you have to miss out on some things. Take that time to do some inner reflection about what's important to you, about the people you love, and about how grateful for all of these things that seem chaotic, how grateful you were when they were in order. Lots happening right now. It's getting somewhat chaotic, but it's a great time for us to reflect on those things that are important. And you're doing a great thing if you can, like my dad mentioned, prevent grandma from getting it, because you're going to isolate yourself a little bit. It's okay to isolate. It's okay to take a break from the rat race and the go, 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 if it's for the betterment of everyone else. But this isn't supposed to be something that's super scary. This is a little more just mathematical. It's like everyone gets the flu. I'm sure everyone watching this has had the flu at some point. Okay, everyone might get the coronavirus at some point in their life. We just don't want it all happening in a 1 week period, because we're not taking the necessary precautions. So let's just be smart about it. We don't have to be afraid of it. Let's just think about it reasonably. And I think that's an important message. Anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I think fear is something that stimulates our fight or flight nervous system, which is giving us a physical ability to run away from something, but it doesn't give our immune system a benefit. So fear probably reduces our ability to produce the appropriate immune response. And that's because the deaths from these viruses come from not only the viral replication, and it kind of hijacks our system so that the cell can't function properly, like the lung cells when it goes to the lung, but our immune response is sometimes what takes us out. And so we've talked about that on other videos. We've talked about sepsis, how sepsis is many times our own immune system overreacting. So we talked about on our last video about how the sun keeps your immune system acting at the appropriate level for what's going on, so that it doesn't underreact and it doesn't overreact. And so we really say getting out in nature, and obviously not in a crowd, but going out, getting barefoot on some pristine sand or grass, get in the sun. The sun is the best thing for your immune system. I'm not talking about going out and burning yourself if you haven't been in the sun, but getting several hours in the sun every day, getting the sun in your eyes without your glasses, without clothes on if possible. The sun activates our vitamin D, which is a really critical part of our immune system. The sun has a huge contribution to the microflora inside our gut, which is another gigantic part of our immune system. And so sunlight alone, and we talk about circadian rhythm ad nauseum in other videos. So circadian rhythm is key to keeping your immune system, like I say, balanced, not overreacting and not underreacting, because overreacting can kill you. Underreacting can also kill you. But I just want to bring up one last point, is that various ways of looking at this. It's been reported that 26% of the instances where someone passes the coronavirus to someone else, 26% of the time, that person is not ill. So that's why the social isolation is so important, because even if you're not sick, because more than a quarter of the time, you have it, you don't know it, and you're spreading it. So that's why, and this doesn't have to be long. When they shut things down in Italy and Wuhan, it takes 2 weeks for the virus to start declining. You know, it's not like we're going to spend years in social isolation.
It's 2 weeks. Look at it as a break to reflect, as I mentioned before, to get your mind and your body right. We're going to do a separate video too on all the different steps you can take to build your immune system and make sure it's responding accordingly. As my dad mentioned, if you deal with septic shock where you have an over immune response, that's still not in balance either. So we're going to teach you guys exactly what you need to do to build your immune response, which is important because we're all probably going to get this virus at some point in our life. That's just the reality, just like all of the other household name viruses. So you need to build up your immune response. You can't just rely on a vaccine or the government or the healthcare system to protect you. You have to take ownership of your own immune system. So we're going to give you guys the tools to do that. And you can implement those right away. Yeah, go do the things we're going to tell you, not in a big group or a big crowd. Go do them by yourself or with one other person for now until the dust settles a little bit on this. But that'll be in a separate video. We'll try and get that one up today as well, because this information is really critical right now. Anything you want to add to that, Dad?
Yeah, I would just say, as far as contamination, if someone coughs, those droplets tend to go about 6 feet. So if you keep a 10-foot distance from someone, you can have social interaction. And remember, surfaces that are exposed to many people are the big problem, because the virus can remain viable for several weeks on surfaces. So, the surfaces in the subway or at the bus stop or on the bus, or, all these surfaces that, especially if we live in a big city, that we come in contact with and lots of people are touching. Remember, this virus right now, today, is everywhere. And the time to do this social distancing is not tomorrow. It's today, because today is where it'll have the most impact. Tomorrow, the impact will be 50% less, or, maybe that's not the exact number because that just flew into my head, but it's going to be significantly less tomorrow. If you expose yourself to 100 people today, it's likely that one of those people could have the virus. And so if you wait till tomorrow, boom, you're spreading it, you're part of the problem.
Yep. So use this time to, be alone for a little bit. Don't contribute to the spread of it. Don't live in fear either, though. Just take it as an opportunity to spend some time with yourself and your loved ones, and to take a little break, from the real world. Everything will be fine once the dust settles, but a lot more people are going to suffer if we don't each take accountability for our role in the collective. So we appreciate you tuning into this. Make sure you share this with someone you love. This message is really important and it needs to spread. We'll see you guys on that next video where we talk about how to boost your immune system so you don't fall victim to the coronavirus or really any other virus or disease. We'll see you on that video. Thanks, Dad.
Thanks.